Hello and welcome to the MovieKing Podcast. My name is David Jurmann and I'll be your host. On today's episode, I'm going to review the film Is This Thing On? So this is a new film by writer-director Bradley Cooper. I've always liked Cooper as an actor. He's shown to have a lot of talent and has multiple Oscar nominations over the years. And his two films he directed, A Star is Born and Maestro, were also up for Best Picture. And look, I enjoyed those two movies he directed, but if I'm being completely honest, I don't think either are Best Picture worthy. I remember when A Star is Born came out, like, everyone was hyping it up, like, oh my god, this thing's amazing. And I remember seeing the trailers and thinking, like, wow, this actually does look really good. But I have to say, like, I thought it was a little disappointing. Still good, like, still a good movie, but, not really a movie I was like, wow, that needs to be Best Picture of the Year or something. And then Maestro, was enjoyable enough, but I think, honestly, more people are talking about it because of how much, just how stupid it was that, like, the whole thing was Bradley Cooper just giving himself, like, a big nose, and, he's making the movie all about him. Like, it's just, I don't think it's been a great look for Bradley Cooper, frankly, just the way he's been running these movies. Like, I think it's become more about him than the movies. Like, it's more Oscar baity that he's been making, and I think it's just been about time that he makes just a movie that, is good for him, just feels true to him, not really trying to be, this big awards contender. I mean, even Is This Thing On? Like, just watching the trailer, I was like, this looks like another Oscar bait movie. But, I kind of went into this movie expecting a pretty good film, and in a way, that's what I got. And I was surprised, though, the movie just isn't getting more awards buzz like the other two movies he did. Those two got a lot of awards buzz, and this movie, it looked like it was going to be an Oscar contender when the trailers came out, but no one's really talking about it right now. No one's really having it, on their radar for award season. Maybe it'll still get nominated. I don't know. Reviews are very good, so it's not like it doesn't have what it takes, but no one's really talking about it. And now that I've seen the movie, I do kind of get it. Like, it's a good movie, but nothing groundbreaking. And I think the ironic part of this all is I actually would say this is probably my favorite film Cooper has directed. The one that's not getting any awards buzz is probably the one I like the most. And I think it's certainly better and less pretentious than Maestro. And I think A Star is Born probably has higher highs as a movie. Like, when that movie's great, it's really, really great. But I think this movie is more consistent and a bit less predictable than that one. And I'm not saying A Star is Born is predictable because it's a remake. I'm just saying, like, even without seeing the other A Star is Born movies or knowing what happens in it, I found that movie to still be kind of like, okay, I've kind of seen this before. Anywho, though, let's start off with what I liked about Is This Thing On? And first off is the performances. Will Arnett does a good job here. I'm not used to seeing him do more dramatic roles, so this was a nice change of pace for him. He still has a lot of comedy here naturally, as the movie is about a guy who does stand-up comedy, and it fits him because Will Arnett's very funny, he does a lot of comedic roles, and what I did like about this, though, is there's a more serious and sad side to this character, too, that Arnett channels nicely. It's this sort of somberness that he's just, like, sitting there, and you can just see he's not happy, even though he's kind of a comedian, and I think, in a way, that's kind of a commentary on a lot of comedians in general. It's just like, they're trying to make people laugh, but they're actually facing their own personal issues, and that's kind of what this movie represented to me, but also what I think Arnett brought to the role, is he really channeled that energy. And then Laura Dern is also really solid, maybe my favorite performance from her since Marriage Story. She was really great in that movie, and I think she's very good here too. She brings a lot of energy, and I liked a lot of what she did here. There's a good amount of nuance in her performance, especially in the latter half of the movie. You get to see different sides of her, and you fully understand where her character is coming from. Like, you can see just from her facial expressions and the emotions, like, what she's trying to convey. So she was very good. And then the other main one to note is none other than Bradley Cooper himself, playing just kind of a funny friend. He's not very smart. He's just kind of like, I don't even want to say what he's doing, but it's just like, not that it's inappropriate or anything. I don't know. It's, I think, funnier if you watch the movie. He's just a goofy guy, and there's nothing special about the performance in any way. It's just a fun performance by Cooper where he's just having a good time. But I do want to keep talking about Cooper here because I like a lot of what he brought to this movie as a filmmaker, as a director and writer. For one, his style is more apparent than ever before. He likes doing these long takes that are right up in the characters' faces, and it really immerses you in the moment. The camera work feels improvised, even though it's definitely not, and it offers a more intimate look at what's going on in these characters. Like, you really just feel like you're right up in their face. You can see everything that's going on in their emotional state, and, you know, a lot of filmmakers would just kind of do more wide shots. They'd really try to stay back, but this movie's very handheld, you know, very up close. And the one thing I'll say is, like, movies and shows that tend to do this approach are usually more ones that, like, you know, are on more of a time crunch. Like, they're really trying to just film as quickly as possible and trying to get a lot of coverage, you know, without having to do a lot of setups, or just doing handheld right in the character, you know. And that's what this movie does a bit, but I feel like it's more intentional than just rushed shot choices, because what this movie's doing in the camera work just kind of says a lot about the way characters react to things, and I think it feels very intentional to me. But I appreciated it. I thought it really worked in this movie. I wouldn't have minded a little more, you know, wide shots a few times, like just a little bit less up close, but I like the long takes a lot. Those are really immersive. They do a very good job of kind of capturing you in the moment. But that was all good. And then on a script level, this is sort of a tough movie because it's trying to be funny, but it also has a lot of drama to get through, especially on the subject of divorce, which, you know, isn't exactly a happy topic. And that's a rough tonal balance to have, but the movie makes it work. I was actually really just surprised by how much the movie kind of subverted expectations. Like, we feel like we've seen this kind of movie before, you know, a guy becomes a comedian. We've seen that. We've seen movies about divorce, you know, and I think even if by the end of the movie it gets where you probably expected it to go, the way it gets there felt original and fresh. And that's kind of what I said about the movie Eternity from late last year, which kind of did an original premise, but it was still at its heart just kind of like a typical rom-com. And this movie is kind of similar, where it's like, you know where it's going, but the way it gets there definitely took me off guard. You know, it was like, wow, that's not what I thought this was going to do. And I appreciated that. A few moments in the movie genuinely shocked me with the directions it went in, but they didn't feel like it was done for shock value only, or just to subvert expectations. Like, they actually felt natural for the story. They felt like real moments that would have happened. And that's a very hard thing to do also, because for a movie like this to kind of, you know, stick to the formula in some ways and kind of give you what you're expecting, but also changing it up enough that you don't know where it's going, I think is a very hard thing to do. And I think Cooper could have just, you know, leaned into familiar tropes and just led with those because they work, but he didn't do that. And I thought, you know, in a way that the risks paid off here. Like, I think it kind of gave this movie a fresh feel to it. I just really liked that the movie didn't feel like a repeat of something I've seen a billion times. Like, it felt like, even though I knew where it was going, it had something else to say too. Which does actually lead me to one of my issues with the film, and that is the first half felt very focused on the comedy club Will Arnett's character is performing at. It's called the Comedy Cellar, and I've actually been there a few times, and it's a lot of fun. I recommend going if you're ever in New York City. They have some good comedians there. But anywho, I thought that part of the movie did a nice job of showing how a sad man uses comedy to distract himself and gives him a sense of purpose and community. All that stuff was really great. And the second half of the movie kind of does something different, which isn't a problem. I was cool with where it went, and I think the third act in particular is strong, but there's this period where we don't see the comedy club for a while, and it just kind of faded into the background. Like, we were seeing so much of it, and then, you know, for a long period of time, like, we're just not even talking about it, we're not seeing it, and it kind of left a gap. Like, and I feel like it was doing a bit of a disservice to everything that had been built up so well beforehand. And also, there are these kids in the movie who are in a lot of the first half of the film as well, but disappear for a lot of the second. And it's just these things that, like, when you have these great setups, you want to see it continue throughout the rest of the movie, but the choices it makes, what it prioritizes, kind of abandoned some things you liked in the first half of the movie, and as a result, I was just kind of like, oh, like, I wanted to see a little more of that. I don't know if the movie needed to be longer, or maybe they just needed to adjust, the focus a little bit. I think the ending of the movie makes up for some of what was lacking there, but I really think if the second half just found a way to balance the new ideas more, it would have been more satisfying, and I probably would have liked the movie a little more. But hear me out, I did enjoy this movie as a whole, and it's definitely entertaining. Most things about it are good, and I liked what this movie has to say, kind of about marriage and relationships and communication and how people feel in relationships. It's not saying much new or groundbreaking. It's not trying to be the next Citizen Kane. In fact, it's not even that different from a couple other movies I saw in 2025 that kind of said the same thing. One of them was Eternity, but it does say it well, so it's all good. And I'm not really sure how most people kind of feel about this movie because it has good reviews and a lot of people seem to like it, but when I went, a lot of the older people in my theater didn't seem to like it very much. Like the person a few seats down from me, I heard her being like, that was just alright, and I was like, that was a good movie. I don't know what you're talking about. But the younger couple next to me were laughing pretty hard, and so was I at points. I would say the movie's not, like, hilarious. Don't go in expecting a comedy. Like, this is definitely more of a drama, but it has some good humor in there. But look, maybe it'll hit differently for a variety of people, and I guess comedy is subjective after all. But if you're interested, I'd say to give this a watch. It's definitely not an award-worthy movie, but it's a very enjoyable one at that. So I'm going to give Is This Thing On a B. And that about does it for this episode. If you want to follow my reviews, you can find me on Letterboxd at MovieKing1224. You can also listen to this podcast on your favorite apps such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear it and improve the show. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to hear more like it. I appreciate you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.